What's up YouTube, Dow here from Zephyr War Games, and massive shout out to Thomas on YouTube who has requested a Summon Skull deck. He did exactly what I asked him to do, which was answer all 9 of the images I posted out yesterday, so it was only fair that I brought this profile for him. Now this build is as competitive as can possibly be. This is to take it to locals, or possibly if you master it, maybe even take it to a regional or higher. But for right now, I will show you the in-depth profile, the deck list, and of course I will show you a combo at the end, which is a 1-card combo that sets you up with 2 interruptions, not to mention a 3rd Omni negate as well, if you want to play it that way. So with all of that out of the way, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell, and subscribe so you do not miss out on any more upcoming content from the channel. With all that out of the way, ladies and gentlemen, let's dive head first into this Summon Skull profile. For the monster lineup, we are playing triple Archfiend's Awakening, alongside triple Summon Skull, triple Psychic Wielder, triple Tour Guide of the Underworld, double Fiendish Rhino, double Archfiend Heiress, double Manju, alongside single Seer, Graph, Boots, Cloak, Dark Magician, and Red Eyes Black Dragon. For the spells, we have triple Allure of Darkness, triple Advanced Ritual Art, triple Preparation of Rites, then single Polymerization, Red Eyes Fusion, and Foolish Burial. Alongside for the traps, we have double Dark Sacrifice, double Crackdown, and double Phantom Knight's Fogblade. For the extra deck, we have the 1 Archfiend Manifestation, Archfiend Black Skull Dragon, Phantom Knight's Rusty Bardiche, Cherubini Ebon Angel of the Burning Abyss, Utopia Beyond, Archfiend Ascent, Dampier Vampire Sheridan, Jinzo Laird, Phantom Knight of Breaksword, Stardust Charge Warrior, Archfiend Cool, Coral Dragon, Levianeer the Sea Dragon, Red Eyes Dark Dragoon, and Predaplant Verte Anaconda. So, shout out to Tom on this one for suggesting Summon Skull. It's a deck I've been looking at updating, and now it's time to dive in detail. So we play triple Archfiend's Awakening. This is, I mean, all of the Summon Skull cards and the more recent support they got looks amazing. Like the Ritual, the Fusion, the Synchro, all look really badass and really menacing. The only downside is they kind of suck. So, how do we make the deck as powerful and consistent as possible? Well, you use and abuse a rank 6 engine, a level 6 synchro engine, and then of course you use and abuse a rank 3 engine, which can help utilize your level 6 synchros and your rank 6 plays. How, you ask? Well, I will show you as we go through the profile. Starting off with triple Archfiend's Awakening, you enrich or summon this card with Contact of the Abyss. This card's name becomes Summon Skull on the field, but is still treated as an Archfiend card. Can't be destroyed by battle except by battle with a ritual monster, and cannot be destroyed by monster effects except those of ritual monsters. If this ritual summon card you control is sent to the graveyard by an opponent's card effect, you can special summon 1 Summon Skull from your hand, deck, or graveyard. This card literally should have just, all of the cards, the Fusion, the Synchro, and this card should have just been said, if this card is sent to the graveyard. Or if this ritual summoned, if this Fusion summoned, if this Synchro summoned is sent to the graveyard. It would have made the deck so much better. And then of course we've got triple vanilla Summon Skull. I've decided to go with the alternate artwork on this one. I do have 3 of the originals, which I absolutely love, but I thought it was about time that I showed off the alternate artworks. Normally I've got 1 in English, and I think I've got 1 in Italian, but they look really cool. Regardless, this is just a vanilla Summon Skull, a fiend with dark powers from confusing the enemy among the fiend-type monsters. This monster boasts considerable force. One thing I'm waiting for is Yugioh to get, or just Dark Magician to get, a Dark Magician Summon Skull fusion. Like we've got with Red Eyes Black Dragon, I would love to see one with Summon Skull. It doesn't need to be as broken, doesn't need to be as busted, but it would just be really cool. But you play triple of this, you've got the vanillas that you want to be using by sending with your Advanced Ritual Art. You also have the ability of just using and abusing the vanillas as rank 6 engines. Of course, if you do go into a more heavily fusion focus, or if you do decide to go into a more heavily rank 6 version, that's where other cards like Apprentice can come into play, the Jinzo Menacing Lord, and stuff like that. Now for the rank 3 engine, we've gone with Triple Psychic Wielder. Now I mentioned this before, a lot of people play or decide to play Red Resonator, which is fine, but Red Resonator can get hit by Imperm, Veiler, absolutely anything to stop it resolving its effect, to then having to specifically bring a level 4 on the board so then you can make your level 6 Synchro. Whereas with Psychic Wielder, because you're playing Tour Guide, which is probably one of the best level 3s in the entire game, purely because it instigates level 6 plays, Link 2 plays, and of course rank 3 plays, using a card like Psychic Wielder, which is a tuner that can just special summon itself if you control level 3, allows you to play through disruptions. And what I mean by that is if you go normal summon Tour Guide and they go Imperm Veiler, you go, right, absolutely fine, special summon down Psychic Wielder, can still continue to make my plays of either a rank 3, level 6 Synchro, or of course can make the Link 2 plays as well. So Psychic Wielder, in my opinion, is a heck of a lot better. You can play Emergency Teleport. I don't in this particular version, purely because I've gone with more maximum monsters. But if you wanted to, you could cut this down to 2 and play E-Tele as an additional free extender. You can also play the other Psychic card, but the reason I went with Wielder is purely because it is a tuner. Then, of course, Tour Guide. You're going to max this out now that you can. This card is insane for the deck. Literally, she is a 1-card combo that will get you all the way to the abilities of either going for a Summon Skull Ritual plus Bardiche, or of course you're probably going to end up going with Bardiche plus Dragoon, or Bardiche plus the Archfiend Fusion. So it really depends on where you want to go with it, but it does give you a lot to do, which I think is absolutely amazing. Such a good card and needs to be maxed out in this deck. To come off of the Summon of Tour Guide, you want to be bringing out your Fiendish Rhino, or to help you with your combos, you do want to bring out the Graph or Seer, and I'll explain that a little bit later on. But the reason you go with Fiendish Rhino is because Fiendish Rhino, when it is sent to the graveyard, lets you send a Fiend-type monster. Now, why that is incredibly useful is because not only can it send your BA cards, but it can send Archfiend Heiress. And when Archfiend Heiress is sent to the graveyard via a card effect, you can add one Archfiend card from your deck to your hand. Now, keep in mind, this is Archfiend Awakening, so you can search this out as well. And that gives you your Ritual Monster straight away. So as long as you've either got the ability to bring out your Summon Skull, which I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure Summon Skull's most recent errata is like it's always treated as an Archfiend, but I could be completely wrong on that. But yeah, Archfiend Heiress lets you search out the one of the pieces that you might need. It can also search you out the Red Eyes Archfiend, which is a really nice kind of cool card that if you saw my previous profile of Summon Skull, I was using that in there because what you do is you normal summon Red Stone, and then you tribute off the Red Stone, that will bring you out an Archfiend. So it gives you a free level 6 monster that is also an Archfiend and Summon Skull and a Red Eyes as well. So that works out really, really nicely. The other normal summon in the deck is, of course, Manju. Now, you want to be normal summoning this to get you your ritual spell more times than not because the ritual monster is more easily searchable. And then by doing so, of course, what you're setting yourself up for is you are setting yourself up for the ritual play. So keep that in mind that that's the route you kind of want to go. And that is the route that you kind of want to direct it towards. Then, of course, we are playing the one-offs, which will be the one Seer and the one Graph. Now, the reason you're playing these is literally Tour Guide will summon out the Graph. You link the two of those together. Or even if you don't decide to go with the Graph, it depends. I'll show you the combo at the end of how you want to do it. You can either go Tour Guide, bring out Fiendish Rhino, link those two together. Those two go into Cherubini. Cherubini then allows you to send a level 3 Fiend. Just a level 3 monster in general. That will then allow you to trigger the Arch Heiress, or it can trigger off Seer or Graph or anything like that. So you've got multiple ways of getting to that Foolish Burial of your Heiress. But the idea is that you're either going to then send your Fiendish Rhino will then send, and you're pretty much filling up your graveyard. So a card you could play is like Beginning of the End, because by the time you've done this combo, you've got near enough 7 Darks in your graveyard, especially when you finish the combo completely with the Phantom Knights as well. Either after banishing them, you'll still set yourself up with like 7 Darks in the graveyard, so you can banish 5 and draw 3. So it's a card you could look into to help you with additional draw power. But keep in mind, this full combo only comes from 1 card. So that's going to leave you 4 cards to play with as well. For the one-offs of the Phantom Knights, again, we want to try and keep it as minimal. So we do play the 1 Boots and the 1 Cloak. I'll go over Graph and Seer just in case you don't know what they do. So Graph is, if it is sent to the graveyard, you get to special summon a Burning Abyss from the deck. Now the idea is that you will special summon out Seer, because Seer will go to a zone that Cherubini points to, which means it can't be destroyed, because all BA monsters share the same effect that if they are on the board with a monster that is not BA, they destroy themselves. Now bringing Seer off of Tour Guide negates its effects, so it can't blow itself up. That then allows you to trigger off Seer, and then once you link Seer with Cherubini to go into your Rusty Bardiche, you then trigger Seer's effect to bring back the Cherubini, which then gives you a free Link 2 or a free Dark Fiend on the board. So you can then either continue to Link Climb higher for like a Link 4 or something like that if you wanted to put Appaloosa in the extra deck, or you can focus on using it as link material for your Verte Anaconda to pretty much set up your Verte into Dragoon plays. Then of course you've got your Cloak. So Cloak is the first one you want to send off of your Bardiche, which sets you a Fogblade, but then it can also be banished to search you out of Boots. And then of course you would special summon Boots because you control Rusty Bardiche. You then use Boots as link fodder, which will then allow you to banish and set a second Fogblade. So it gives you a lot to kind of move around and play around with. So it's entirely up to you. You could play Shade Brigadine, but the reason we're not playing that is because it requires you to have an additional monster in the extra deck, in the form of like Link Spider to turn the token into it, to then go into Verte Anaconda. But all that would do is leave you with a Cherubini on board, which ultimately you don't need to keep there. So you've got no issues just running a second Fogblade, because then your end board is going to be Bardiche, Verte, Dragoon with an Omni Negate, still with 4 cards in hand, remember, and then 2 Fogblades. So it's really going to cause your opponent a lot of issues to try and break through that. Speaking of the Dragoon package, you've got the 1 Red Eyes and Dark Magician. Another really nice thing, if you don't fancy Dragoon, is you can use Red Eyes with your Summon Skull to go into your Archfiend, your Black Skull Dragon, which is really kind of nice. It requires a level 6 Archfiend normal monster, which again, I'm pretty sure Summon Skull counts as an Archfiend everywhere. I'll need to double check that. But yeah, that just kind of gives you a kind of a route to play around with as well. So it gives you an option if you don't fancy Dragoon, or if you're like, I'm not playing Dragoon in this deck because I don't want to. And that's completely fine, because if you don't want to play Dragoon in the deck, the 3 main decks that you can swap out, you still keep Red Eyes in for the Archfiend, but the 3 main decks, or the other cards you can put in your main deck for your monsters, is Jinzo the Machine Menace and Apprentice Illusion, and this will just help you your rank 6 plays. I would still play the Phantom Knight engine, I think it's really good, but that's where you'd probably play Shade Brigadine. Because you put Shade Brigadine into the graveyard, you've got Jinzo as well. So from 3 cards, you ultimately ended up with a rank 6, which again, I'll show you the rank 6 in our extra deck because they are spicy as heck. And that can set you up. And then the 2 spaces in your extra deck can become Art Rebellion and Raider's Knight. So it just gives you an additional boss monster. So if you're in a bit more of a budget, or you're really like, I don't want to fall into this whole trap of, you know, Verte into Dragoon plays, then yeah, you can completely bypass that and go for a different route. Then, of course, moving on to the spells, we are playing triple Law of Darkness. As you noticed, our majority, I'm pretty sure our entire deck, apart from Psychic Wielder and Manju, are all darks. So this is probably one of the best draw cards for you. If you were to put, and this is something else as well, if you were to put Apprentice and Jinzo in, because they're level 6, I would put in Celestial Observatory, because that lets you put a level 6 back to the deck. So that lets you put Summon Skull back to the deck and draw cards. The other draw card you could play as well, if you don't play Beginning of the End, is Pot of Avarice, because you're going to have 5 targets in grave, shuffle them back, draw 2, you're good to go. It even allows you to recycle your vanillas that you're sending with your ritual spell. It'll also let you set up your, put your Red Eyes back into the deck for your Archfiend play as well. So it does give you a lot of options, and it does give you a couple of alternate routes as well. For the ritual spells, we are only playing triple advanced ritual art. We're not playing the Contract with the Abyss, purely because Contract with the Abyss is specific. You need to control the cards to do it. Whereas advanced ritual art lets you just basically Foolish Burial a Summon Skull, bring out your ritual monster. So it takes away, and this is what I've said on all of my ritual profiles recently, is when you're doing rituals and when you're doing fusions, you need to try and find ways of cutting corners. And what I mean by that is, with a fusion, you usually need a fusion spell plus the 2 monsters. With a ritual, you usually need the ritual monster, ritual fodder, and the ritual spell itself. Whereas with advanced ritual art, you cut the middleman out. You don't need the fodder in your hand. You can just send that from deck to the grave, and that allows you to gain even more advantage, and it allows you to give a bit more kind of versatility and usability throughout the entire deck. We're also playing triple Preparation of Rites because you can bring your advanced ritual art back from the grave, but it can also help you search you out your Archfiend's Awakening because it's a level 7 or lower ritual monster. This just adds to the consistent factor of the ritual side of the deck, and the best thing about the ritual side of the deck is it sets you up with a level 6 on board. So this is what I'm saying, is if you put the Jinzo in and you want to make that engine a little bit more consistent, then you can do. As you saw in the deck list, we play Crackdown, and as you saw in the extra deck, we play Vampire. In any rank 6 deck that I play, I always play Vampire, and especially with Crackdown, because what makes it so good is you use Crackdown to steal your opponent's monster. You can then, if you're going into Vampire, you use your opponent's monster as long as it has a level, and make it a level 6, and then Vampire just starts stealing your opponent's monsters. That's also why it combos off really well with Jinzo Layered, because Jinzo Layered can steal your opponent's monsters as well. So that's why you can play Mind Control, because basically what you're doing is you're stealing your opponent's monsters and then using it as a material for your plays. So you're able to gain even more advantage by stealing your opponent. Rather than stealing an opponent's monster and using it as link material, you can steal an opponent's monster and then just pretty much go, cool, I'm now going to XYZ into one of my other monsters, which can then steal another one of your monsters. So if you went into, like, for example, if you cracked down and then made Jinzo Layered can steal one of your opponent's monsters, and then as you get another level 6 on board, you can then use that to go into Vampire, and you've pretty much stolen 2 of your opponent's monsters and use them as XYZ material. So it's a little bit better than link material as well, because then you're not just putting them in the grave for your opponent, you're pretty much stealing them for a permanent basis until they get rid of the XYZ. For the fusions, of course, we've got the 1 Polymerization because this gets you into your Archfiend's Manifestation, and you've got the 1 Red Eyes Fusion because this can get you into, not only can it get you into your Red Eyes Dark Dragoon, but it also gets you into your Archfiend Black Skull Dragon as well. So it's got 2 uses in the deck. You're only ever going to use it for 1, but it's just like, if you want to go for the Archfiend for the attack and burn, then you can do, but 9 out of 10 you're probably going to go for Dragoon. Foolish Burial, by sending pretty much anything. Send a Graph, a Seer, send a Cloak, a Boots. All of this will gain you some form of advantage. Chances are you'll probably send your Heiress, and the Heiress is going to give you an additional advantage or an additional search. For the traps, this is where it gets really spicy. So I love Dark Sacrifice in this deck. So when your opponent activates a card or effect that would destroy a card or cards on the field, negate the effect, and then you get to send a level 3 or lower dark monster from your deck to your graveyard. Now, obviously, you can send a Seer. Seer can then revive you a Cherubini. You could send a Archfiend Heiress, which will then search you out an Archfiend monster for your next turn play. It just allows you to pretty much burn through your deck already. Again, set some more darks into the grave, but it also allows you to give you that little bit of protection. Now, we are at a 42 card deck, so if you really don't want to play it, you can just cut Dark Sacrifice completely. I just think it's a very nice tech that works really well in the deck. And then, of course, for the other traps, you've got 2 Crackdown. Like I've already mentioned, activate Crackdown, steal one of your opponent's monsters, get a level 6 on the board, whether it be the Ritual or an actual Summon Skull, and then straight away you just overlay into a rank 6 of your choosing, whether it be, well, no, sorry, not if you're choosing. With Crackdown, you need to go into Vampire, but then Vampire can start stealing your opponent's monsters, and so can Jinzo Layered. And then finally, of course, we've got the 2 Phantom Knights of Fogblade. So obviously the Fogblade is going to be putting in a lot of work going first. If you're going second, you can probably cut this down to 1 if you want. If you're not a fan of the Phantom Knight engine, then you can completely change it. And that's where I'd either go more fusion focused, so you start playing Super Polys, you play Super Poly targets, or you can go for rank 6 versions where you're going with your Apprentices, your Celestial Observatories, and of course your Jinzo's Machine Lords. And that just pretty much gives you more options, and it also gives you alternate routes as well to get win cons from the deck. So with this particular version, what I've put together is I've just tried to make it as competitive as possible. Like, all I want to try and do with this is, I'm not saying you're going to go take Summon Skull to a regional and absolutely win it, but if you're like, alright, I want to take this, if I want to play with my friends, then I would go rank 6 turbo. But then if you're like, I actually want to take this to locals and see what I can do with an Archfiend deck, then this would be a build that I would personally play. Because it just houses and abuses naturally all of the main meta engines in the form of Dragoons, the Phantom Knight engine, which obviously couples off with the BA engine. And because you have the ability to consistently produce level 6s, you could also hardcast a Beatrice, and then that will allow you to play the Pilgrim Dante, but it'll also allow you to play a Farfar in the main deck as well, because then your Beatrice becomes a form of disruption by using the effect to send. Obviously, the Psychic Wielder, like I mentioned earlier, is there to help instigate your synchro plays. If you wanted to, you could go Halif Firebrax, play Plague Spreader and all of that. And another kind of card, if you wanted to make this more Archfiend focused rather than Summon Skull focused, you can play like Cavalry and Commander as well. So keep those in mind. Moving on to the extra deck, of course, we've got the one Archfiend's Manifestation. This is probably the best of the Archfiend Synchro XYZ Infusion, purely because this one, again, it becomes Summon Skull on the field, but it's still treated as an Archfiend card. All Summon Skulls you control gain 500 attack, which is really nice because then it turns all of your Summon Skulls into at least a 3k beta. That being your Ritual, your Synchro, your normal monster, your XYZ, and even himself. Then, if this Fusion Summon card you control is sent to the graveyard by an opponent's card, you special summon one Summon Skull from your hand, deck, or grave. So you can see the downside of that. Then, of course, we've got the one Archfiend Black Skull Dragon. This is basically Black Skull Dragon with an effect. So it requires one level 6 Archfiend normal monster, which is, again, what I'm referring to is that I believe Summon Skull has a recent errata that literally says it counts as an Archfiend card. I need to try and find that as the exact wording. But, yeah, I'll keep looking around until I find it as well. But I'm 99% sure that it counts as an Archfiend. Yeah, so the new erratas has a little bit of text at the bottom that says this card is also always treated as an Archfiend card. So, yeah, absolutely fine on that. So, anyway, you make your Archfiend Black Skull Dragon using Red Eyes Fusion or Polymerization if you were to hard draw Red Eyes. You could also put Dragon's Mirror in, but there's no way of actually playing that through Verte or searching it. So it can get very, very, like, top deck lucky. So you can only special summon Archfiend once per turn. If this card battles your opponent's cards, an effect cannot be activated until the end of the damage step. If damage calculation is performed involving this fusion summoned card, at the end of the battle phase, you can type one Red Eyes normal monster in your graveyard, inflict damage to your opponent equal to its attack in the graveyard, then shuffle it into the deck. So this is kind of a nice way of going, if you wanted to, you would Red Eyes Fuse to go into Archfiend. Archfiend would then spin back the Red Eyes, and then on the follow-up turn, you could then technically go Verte to then make out Dragoon. But like I've said at the start, in my opinion, if I'm playing as competitive as possible, you're always going to go for Dragoon first. Because that Omni Negate and the protection it naturally has is just way, way, way too much. I suppose we'll continue on the fusions and move it into the links. So obviously Red Eyes Dark Dragoon, yay. Is what it is. It's like, right now, it is the strongest extra deck monster around. The fact it's generic, the fact that Verte Anaconda doesn't just offer you access to this, but offers you access to this and this, and the fact Red Eyes Fusion and Red Eyes offer you access to this, you're not just going, right, I'm dumping Red Eyes Dragoon in here for the Red Eyes engine. The only part of the Red Eyes Fusion engine and the Dark Magician, the only bit of it that's a bit of a brick is Dark Magician. Until Dark Magician and Summon Skull get a fusion, baby, that's pretty much where you're standing. But incredibly powerful. It's kind of, if you don't want to play it, like I said, if you're like, I'm not playing Dragoon, or I don't have Dragoon, I'm not going to do it, I want to keep it budget, then Raiders Knight and Arc Rebellion, because then you just get these off of the back of your Breaksword, and you use the Breaksword in that route. For the link monsters, of course, Verte Anaconda, we all know how this one works, so I'm not going to go over that one. But then, of course, you've got your Cherubini, and you've got your Rusty Bardiche. Now, you don't need to play more than one Rusty Bardiche, because keep in mind you can banish Fogblaze to bring Rusty Bardiche back, and it can't be used as link material, so he is what he is. What he will give you in this deck, more than anything else, is the fact that your Breaksword, your Jinzo Laird, your Vampire Sheridan, and your Archfiend Ascent are all Dark XYZs. So if you were to summon those to a zone that Bardiche points to, you will be able to pop a card. Now, obviously, it gets even better, because if you were to go Jinzo Laird, summon Jinzo Laird, pop a card with Rusty Bardiche, Jinzo Laird, steal one of your opponent's monsters, get a level 6 on the board, or activate Crackdown, or whatever, and then you can make your Dampier Vampire Sheridan. It just goes on. And I just think it's really funny and really good when you're using your opponent's monsters against them in the best possible way. Speaking of our XYZs, we do play the one Legionnaire, the Sea Dragon. This can be cut if you want to, but the reason I like this is because you're going to be banishing your boots and your cloak for your plays for the Fog Blades. You're also going to be banishing stuff off of Allure of Darkness. So if you banish out your Heiress, if you banish off a Tour Guide, if you banish off a Seer or a Graph or anything like that, Legionnaire can bring them back to the board. Now, obviously, keep in mind for the Seer and the Graph plays, when it brings it back to the board, you do need to have a very particular setup to make sure they don't nuke themselves, but it is just technically a free extender should you want it. Again, like I said, entirely up to you. Don't have to play it, and you can play something else entirely, but it can also help get you into Verte plays as well. For the rank 6s, this is where it gets beautiful. You've got the one Utopia Beyond. So if this card is XYZ, summon the attack of all monsters your opponent currently controls become 0. And then during your player's turn, you can detach 1 XZ from this card, target 1 face-up XYZ monster you control, and 1 Utopia monster in your graveyard. Banish the first target, and if you do, special summon the second. Now, obviously, that's not going to happen because you're not going to have a Utopia in the graveyard, but it's more so just turning all your opponent's monsters attack to 0, and then if you're able to follow up this play with like Vampire or anything like that, all of your damage is just going to be guaranteed. The one Archfiend's Ascent, again, this card's name becomes Summon Skull on the field, but is also treated as an Archfiend card. If Summon Skull or Skulls you control would be destroyed by battle or card effect, detach 1 material from this card instead. If this XYZ card you control is sent to the graveyard by an opponent's card, then special summon 1 Summon Skull from your hand, deck, or graveyard. Now, to me, like on the level, again, it looks amazing. I love the overlay units going around it. He looks so menacing. I love the green portal at the bottom. My issue is, he's not as good as other generic rank 6s. Like, why do you want to protect your Summon Skulls from card effects when all of their effects trigger to summon out a Summon Skull when they're destroyed? So you're not really losing a lot. But like when you compare it to stuff like Jinzo Laird, which is just steal a monster, target a trap and blow stuff up, which I'll get to in a minute, and Vampire, which is like steal a monster, destroy it by battle, send it to the graveyard, whatever, do some more stuff. It's like, this could have been so much better. I think what they did is they like, right, okay, we'll create 1 Summon Skull, like an Archfiend Awakening, and then we're just going to duplicate it and we'll just do a little bit of a change. So it's a bit disappointing, but you still play it. It's an Archfiend deck, it's a Summon Skull deck, that's why you go with it. Dampier Vampire Showdown. I talk about this card every single time I make a rank 6 deck. It requires 2+ level 6 monsters. If you use a monster or monsters with a level that is owned by your opponent for the XYZ summon of this card, treat it as a level 6. So if you were to crack down Jinzo Laird, you can pretty much make Vampire Sheridan. Nice. Once per turn, detach 1 material from this card, target 1 card your opponent controls, send it to the graveyard. Once per turn, if a monster card or cards is sent from the field to your opponent's graveyard by a card effect, or a monster is destroyed by battle and sent to your opponent's graveyard, detach a material from this card and special summon one of those monsters in defense position. So again, if you wanted to, you could play multiple Vampires, because then you just go, alright, steal another one of my opponent's monsters, overlay. But the idea is that Vampire can then help you instigate your Verte plays, and it can also be more consistent in other routes. Jinzo Laird, beautiful new addition. So you can detach 1 material from this card, target a face-up monster your opponent controls, take control of it until the end phase. But it cannot activate its effect or declare an attack. Doesn't matter if I'm going to use it as link material or overlay material. If a trap card is on the field, you contribute 1 monster, and if you do, destroy 1 face-up card on the field. You can only use this effect of Jinzo Laird once per turn. So again, it allows you to put some of your cards in the graveyard. You're probably going to have Fogblade face up on the board. So it just gives you another way to pretty much go, alright, pop a card. So, yes, it is in a sense a 1-for-1, because you need to destroy a face up card. Sorry, you need to tribute a monster. If it was like destroy 1 face up card on your side of the field and 1 on your opponent's side of the field, then you just pop Fogblades all day long. But its first effect is more just about steely, destroy. And then, of course, you've got the 1 Phantom Knights of Breaksword. Again, just a 1-for-1 pop and pop. So pop the Fogblade, pop one of your opponent's monsters. Or if you're going for the budget option, then you pop Breaksword when either you summon it to the Bardiche zone, or you just pop Breaksword with its own effect. And that will then allow you to get both the Phantom Knights back to make them level 4s to make Raiders Knight. And then, of course, you can put XYZ Art Rebellion on top of Raiders Knight, which gives you a 1-shot game over. For the level 6 Synchros, and again, keep in mind, because they're level 6 Synchros, they can also be used as overlay units. You do have the 1 Stardust Charge Warrior for a nice little free draw, the 1 Archfiend Call, which I'll get to in a second, and of course your Coral Dragon. Now the Coral Dragon is purely there for the discard and pop. You don't want to use it as overlay material, you want to use it as link material, because then you'll get the draw. But you could also, as it is a tuner, work your way up into like Synchro 9s if you wanted to, like Shen, but I think that's a little bit too much for the deck. You could as well, if you wanted to, and got both of these on board, you could go for like an Ultimate Zolkin, but a little bit of bigger brain plays. So, Archfiend's Call, again, it looks so badass. Like, look at the background and the spread wings. It's just like, oh, your artwork deserves a better effect. So this card's name becomes Summon Skull on the field, but it's still treated as an Archfiend card. Your opponent cannot target any Summon Skull you control with card effects. If this Synchro summoned card you control is sent to the graveyard by an opponent's card effect, special summon 1 Summon Skull from your hand, deck, or graveyard. Stop me if you've heard that bit before. And that is it, literally. So, I would still cast this as a Summon Skull deck, even though our main meta combo does not involve Summon Skull as much. But what I will do is I will reset the board state and I'll show you the combo, the 1-card combo that can lead you into Bardiche, 2 Fogblades, and then either Dragoon or your Archfiend fusion. Really is down to you. So back in a second. Now, the only issue with Tour Guide is, yes, it can get stopped by hand traps, and no, it is not easily searchable. But the idea behind all of this is you're going to normal summon out your Tour Guide. Now, it doesn't really matter too much on the route that you make this, because you're going to be able to send your remaining materials. But the idea is, Tour Guide would special out Fiendish Rhino or Seer, doesn't matter. You would then link these two together. I'm going to use the spell and track card zone so you can see everything clearly. And you'll go into your Cherubini. Now, what you then do is your Fiendish Rhino can then trigger its effect. Again, it can send Seer, it can send Graph, but it's probably going to send your Archfiend Eris. Your Archfiend Eris will then trigger her effect because she's been sent via card effect, and you're specifically going to add a Summon Skull because you want to be using it for your fusion. Now, you can search out your Archfiend Awakening if you want to, if you've got the Ritual spell. So it just depends on if you've got that in your hand, then you can go that route as well, because then as long as you can get to another Summon Skull, you can actually end up with your Archfiend Awakening plus your summons, plus your fusion, and either overlay them for a rank 6 or whatever you want. Cherubini can then trigger his effect. He will then send from your deck to the graveyard your Graph. That will then trigger Graph's effect to special a Burning Abyss from the deck, which will trigger Seer, and Seer will go to a zone that Cherubini points to. You will then use Seer and Cherubini, and you will go into your Rusty Bardiche. That will then trigger Seer's effect in graveyard to bring back your Cherubini Ibon Angel. This can go to the far right, just completely out of the way. And then what you're going to start doing is you're going to start doing your Phantom Knight effects. So you're going to send off of Bardiche your Cloak, which will then let you set a Fog Blade. So you've got one of those set. You will then banish your Cloak to add you your Boots, and you will special summon down your Boots, and the Boots will then allow you to link this with Cherubini. And this will go to your Verte Anaconda. There we go, Verte Anaconda can go there. You can then banish your Boots before you activate Verte Anaconda's effect. And this will then get you a second Fog Blade. Now, obviously, you now have two options. Option number one, activate Verte Anaconda's effect to send Red Eye's Fusion to bring out Red Eye's Dark Dragoon. Cool, standard. Activate Verte Anaconda's effect to activate Red Eye's Fusion to bring out your Archfiend. That is again another option. Option number 3 requires you to either use Bardiche, entirely up to you, or you can choose it to use another monster in your hand as long as it is a dark. So what you can do there is you then use Verte Anaconda to send Pulverization, and that will then allow you to actually fuse out your Archfiend Manifestation, because it just requires Summon Skull and one dark monster. Now, I'm not too sure if you could use Verte Anaconda as the fusion effect. I'm not sure as the material. Possibly, because it sends a fusion as cost. So if that's the case, then basically what you're doing is you get rid of Verte Anaconda and you use these two to make your manifestation. Now, obviously, if you don't do that and you've got another Archfiend in hand, then your board ends like this. You still then leave yourself with 3 cards in hand and you're sitting on 2 Fog Blades. What more could you possibly want? Like, it's just a very, very direct, very simple kind of combo. But it's something that you need to be aware of if you're trying to take, or if you want to take this deck to a locals and try and do really well with it. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for the profile. That is it for the combo as well. Very, very basic, very, very to the point. Now, if you want an Archfiend deck, then obviously I'll change this up a bit more. I'd be putting in Cavalries, I'll be putting in Commanders, and we'd go down that route. If you want a pure Summon Skull deck that is rank 6 focused, I can do that. If you're looking for an Archfiend or a Summon Skull deck that is pure fusion, I can do that as well. This is a competitive as it can possibly be Archfiend deck that pretty much gives you the best of everything, being meta relevant, being effective against any kind of matchup that you really have, because it has a nice balance of control and aggression, and it also helps you pretty much get back to loving Summon Skull. So, for now, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share. And as absolutely always, guys, as important as always, stay safe and happy dueling.